Good morning. So just one more minute. We are waiting for everyone to join, and then we will start our work. Okay, then I will begin. I see that Veronica has nodded. That means that I should start the meeting. I welcome you on behalf of our Institute of Economic Research, organizations that implement the project within Ukrainian past European Union Polish experience. Within the framework of this project, we conduct seminars, workshops from experts in the key sectors of economy, those areas of European integration that can be quite controversial, but at the same time, it's a potential area for cooperation between Polish and Ukrainian side. Our previous meeting in March was about energy sector. Now we are going to focus on transport, auto transport, and it really brought a big interest in both Poland and Ukraine. This for sure is a very important area. And I believe that this is an area where we will see a lot of competition among Ukrainian and Polish entrepreneurs, but we hope that we will be able to find some areas for joint cooperation. We would like to we would like to identify how Ukrainian entrepreneurs may adapt to European regulations, identify how technological innovation can improve the safety of Ukrainian transport, and how Ukrainian transport sector can use the experience of Poland in their development with Euro integration. If there are such examples, we would like to see them of this joint cooperation between Polish and Ukrainian companies in motor transport area. And I want to say a warm hello to all of our speakers, representatives from companies from both countries, organizations that gather entrepreneurs, independent experts, and everyone who is interested in this topic, and also representatives from other countries, not only Poland and Ukraine, but also other states. They are interested in seeing how this area may look like. What is the future with European Union? Thank you, and I want to invite to this interesting discussion our new moderator. This is Miss Veronika Movchan. She is Director of Research in Institute of Economic Research. And now I want to give the floor to the representative of one of our generous sponsors, Mr. Dmytro Shulha. He's from International Renaissance Foundation. It's very nice that we gathered here to talk about this topic, the cooperation of Poland and Ukraine, that brings a lot of emotions right now, of course, and a lot of disappointment and this idea that we are big competitors. But I remember just 1 or 2 years ago, the conversation with different experts. It was interesting to talk through. Unfortunately, Dmytro has been muted. Yes, in transit potential of both of the countries and understanding that there is a potential between Baltic and Black Sea that can be used to the benefit of Ukraine and Poland, the possibility of having central corridor and using the passages of Ukraine and Poland to ensure the transit from east to west, from west to east, and possible scenarios for that, and Eastern Partnership that would be very beneficial to European Union and different scenarios of using those things when we win Russian Federation and we will get the Black Sea back. And as far as I understand now, all of those conversations, they went down to some disputes between Ukraine and Poland. And as far as I understand from the Ukrainian side, we're not really talking about perspective of having such transit. And overall, the Polish-Ukrainian border is being seen as a barrier, unfortunately, in this situation. And this is a paradox. And I hope that we will be able to go to a different path. Just as you are saying, the options and opportunities for cooperation and strengthening the cooperation in transport and remove those barriers and find a way, create a roadmap and eliminate those barriers, and in the end, get to cooperation in strategic from the strategic point of view that is possible, but we could really get stuck in those small things where, behind such little things, we can lose our strategic vision and prospects. But we understand this is very not easy. It's easy to say, but not easy to do. And we see that we have a dialogue from two sides. And I hope that we will have a dialogue between experts and shareholders that stakeholders that are going to have a constructive dialogue and really discuss the challenges and how they can be addressed, understanding that we do have some common interests and we need to make ourselves understand that we need to have more in common than those things that may separate us. So that's why I'm very, very interested to listen to presentations and experts. I hope we're going to have a good meeting. Lukasz, Dmytro, thank you very much. Now I'm taking the microphone to me back. And before we go further to the discussion on the very relevant topic, and both Lukasz and Dmytro already highlighted the topics that we want to talk about, just a technical break. We have this conversation, this dialogue is happening in 3 languages today. Please make sure to select the language that you are comfortable with, where you want the language you want to speak in. So Polish for Polish experts, Ukrainian for Ukrainian, English, and make sure that you select the language in the bottom panel where you have the globe. And also we are going to have a broadcast to Facebook. It's going to be in original, so it's going to be in a few languages. And in few days, we will post the recording of the webinar onto YouTube with the language. Well, 3 languages, Ukrainian, Polish, English. So if anyone missed anything, you will be able to rewatch it again. So now we have 7 speakers, very good speakers. I will be giving the floor to them, asking questions, and please make sure to write your questions in the chat or maybe prepare them. And we have 1.5 hours. I hope that we will be able to cover all the key questions. And I want to encourage you because your questions are very important for further discussions. Now I want to give the floor for opening up this topic to Mr. Andriy Bogdanovich. He's an expert in road transport and he is a former director of road transport and worked in Polish Ministry of Transport. So let's start from the beginning. What was the key? What were the key things when Poland had to prepare themselves in the area of transport when they had to prepare for accession? And maybe the biggest opportunities, because now Poland is very strong in this area. How did you succeed? And also the mobile park that has been active already. How does it impact the transportation area overall? And hopefully, what benefits it can give to further cooperation in European Union. So the floor goes to you. You are okay. Hello. Yes, I want to say thank you for inviting me to this dialogue, and thank you for having the opportunity to also to comment on my position in this area, and we can even say our membership in the European Union. Soon it's going to be 20 years. Sorry, I don't see Polish. I'm not sure where I should select okay, I found. Okay, does it work? Everything's good? Can you please confirm that you hear me? Everything is good. You hear me in Ukrainian. We hear you. All good. We do. So, dear colleagues, as I was introduced, in fact, I had an opportunity and still have an opportunity to work on both sides of road transport reality because I worked as the director of the department of Polish Ministry of Transport, and I was personally taking part in preparation of Poland to membership in EU and implementation of this membership. And later on, in, I am working in Polish Association of Employers in Road Transport that gathers a few dozens of different companies. And I have my personal experience of comparing this world, legal world, and organizational world that creates the conditions for running a business more than 10 years, and I can really assess this reality, this reality from legal point of view, whether it's good, how promising it is. And if we talk about this point of view, that if if I was getting this experience in reverse, I think that some things would have gone easier, or maybe some solutions we could have found faster. Membership in EU or receiving the status for Poland, it took 12 years. It was preparation in conditions, so to say, calm reality, we might say, but now we cannot really say the same when we talk about Ukraine and Ukrainian companies. Only constant war with the aggressor and this economic reality from this side and also legal reality, of course, it's more complicated and it is more targeting analytics preparation of the state and Ukrainian carriers to accession to EU is different, but of course it requires constant dialogue and constant work. I think that it's not the last meeting when we're talking about this, and the area of road transport, and for everyone who is gathered here today, I think you all are working very particularly with this area. And road transport in economy, this is like a nerve. It's like a blood flow system of economy that allows to launch all the economic processes and keep them in shape. And this is a vulnerable area because road transport companies, they are the first ones to feel when the economy slows down. And they are the first one to feel the crisis that is coming up. And they have the privilege also that they are the first ones that the crisis is over and some and the economy goes active again and the everything gets activated and goes back to normal. Our preparation to accession EU took quite a long time due to different reasons: political, technical, integrational reasons. And the first period of time of this preparation, that's first of all the analysis of all regulatory requirements and regulations, the legal reality from EU point of view, the requirements, respective organization or of such regulations, what regulations must be used, which ones they set very clear frame, and also another legal area, it's directives, guidelines, where you have certain freedom during the preparation and implementation, where you can select some solution for you, of course, within the framework of directive or guideline. And road transport sector in this activity, it's also very vulnerable because it is very important for every economy. This is the sector where it's important to have economy, autonomous economy and state. And within EU, there are three main freedoms that are functioning: the one for providing services, and the flow of people and capital. But this reality, it is in reality a little bit different than these theoretical freedoms. There's no full openness as EU consists of 27 countries. Each country, they have their own peculiarities, their realities, and try to interpret it very individually, tailoring for their country. And different countries, they are, we can even joke about this, so to say, they are they are protecting themselves from full integration, so to say. And we act in this way, so it's totally open, and we try to take in everything that is also dictated by market economy. If we talk about Poland, transport has become the leading brand, the leading area of EU economy. For example, I can only say that the moment of accession in 2004, Polish international mobile transport, if we show it in numbers, it was 25,000 vehicles, but in beginning of this year, it's around 350,000, even of those trains, and it's only the ones that have license, and there are more than 300,000 of entrepreneurs that also conduct transport activity, but for their personal need. And Polish road transport companies, those are 100% private companies that are uh, that run activity of a certain on behalf of a certain individual or group of individuals, and on the base of their active work in business, this Polish road transport area was created. Even according to official data from the analytics of EU, it shows that Polish entrepreneurs, they are planning 1/3 of road transport services on EU market, and it is more than 80% of transportation. Of course, we need to take into consideration the fact that Polish entrepreneurs that are also present on this meeting, they are following carefully everything that's happening. They will be protecting their companies, their organizations that they represent. They will be fighting for maintaining that position. Of course, this market, EU market, will open up at some point for Ukrainian carriers. And I'm not talking about the opening that happened due to signing the agreement between Ukraine and EU, because this was opening with no conditions. If we talk about freight transportation, not trans trade, but when we talk about this opening, this real opening of the market, I just want to emphasize once again, because this will happen again when the legal system, organizational system will be adapted in Ukraine, and all the regulations will be ready for this, and everything will be in compliance with EU regulations. And then the carriers, they will see the reality, what has to be done, what standards are going to be enacted, technical standards if we talk about vehicles, and in the upcoming years, there's going to be a complete rebuild of this market in EU in the area of emissions, and eliminating emissions that will be implemented gradually for transport. But in 2030, it is foreseen that we will have to go down 90% in terms of emissions. So for everyone, and those that will be active from Ukrainian side, they also need to think about this, that they will have to adapt to those regulations and be able to receive this current legal information about those regulations that are all already being accepted, this economic political decisions that are already being accepted. And you need to take this into consideration, because the more you know, the earlier you know, the more time you will have for preparation for your company, the easier it's going to be for them to prepare and to really uh, get their spot in this reality. I also have my personal experience. Our legal system that regulates transport activity for many years, it would meet requirements of European system way long before 2004, and the transport sector really prepared for accession. But all the areas of activities, they must be adapted, and some regulations, legal amendments are needed because transport doesn't access EU somehow separately on their own. This is about the economy as a whole. So for us, 2004, it was the open doors, and we were ready. These last months, that they were about technical issues, for example, exchange of documents, document flow, identification, for signing a few thousands of documents and sending it to the carriers. And this is more of logistics, but even that is hard to do. Then to be able to freely use the open market. So according to my assessment, it is important for you, and we could talk a lot about this, but when we talk about negotiations on accession to EU, when you're taking your decision, it's very important that the road transport and the ministry that is responsible for this activity jointly with the people, with companies, they have a plan, integration plan, and they also develop respective proposals using this transit period of time that is about organizations of road transport companies also receiving providing services and everything meeting the requirements, because EU of course will be looking into this, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions. I think that's it for now, and after we have the discussion, maybe the organizers will help to send your questions later on. Mr. Andrei, thank you very much for your interesting and concise presentation. A few interesting points you mentioned, and I hope we will have time to talk through later on. That some things, after you work from the point of employers, you would have done somehow differently, and this is very important. And coming from the share that Poland now has on European market, and how the amount of vehicles has grown. Of course, it is also connected to the growth of Polish economy overall, but it's you took the share that might have been before French or German or some other countries. I think we will talk about this later on. But now I would like to give the floor to all of our recorded speakers, the ones that are planned, and I want to give the floor to Ms. Valentina Malchevska, Director of Transport Policy Department from Association of International Road Carriers of Ukraine. So I would like to how do you see what Ukraine has done already? What is left to be done in order to prepare for accession, and what challenges you might see for your association? Thank you, Veronika, for the word. I would like to say hello to our Polish colleagues, first of all. Hello, Mr. Andrzej. I have to say that we know our Polish colleagues quite good, because we've met for many times within the framework of Ukrainian-Polish mixed commissions on international transportation, and we were talking about cooperation, and those meetings were very useful even though not necessarily it was bringing the result we were expecting, so to say. But I want to send a warm greeting to Mr. Andrzej. For us, it is, of course, very important knowing the experience of accession and Polish legislation on transportation compared to EU. It's very important for us to hear your opinion. First of all, I'm going to talk about the homework that has already been done by Ukraine in transportation, because the Association of International uh, Road Transportation was never uh, put aside from these relevant problems. And of course, Polish Polish transportation sector has gone very far, and those are really impressive results. Of course, we would like to talk about some positive things because unfortunately in Ukraine there is a lot of negative, very much. But we would not like to concentrate on this, like for any business, both in for road transportation business. What is important? The most important things are stability and being able to forecast things. And for the business to at least be able to look further, two steps further to understand where you're moving. Unfortunately, Ukrainian carriers, as of today, they are deprived of this opportunity and of this very optimistic view into the future. Nevertheless, by the nature, Ukrainians are optimists. So we are doing everything possible to go through this path with dignity that Poland has gone through 20 years ago. So I believe, if I'm not wrong, it was in May 2004 when two countries joined European family. And I want to say that the specialists of the association for many years have been concentrated very meticulously exploring and studying EU legislation that regulate road transportation. Even before in 2014, when there was an agreement between EU and Ukraine about association. And of course, that work has been activated now when Ukraine, despite of the war, is willing, has ambitions to access EU. To a certain degree, working on EU market for quite long, Ukrainian carriers, of course, by a big part, they have been adapted to those conditions. But we understand that this is not, far from being a full adaptation. But any changes that are done by the acts of European Union, it could be technical or social, the social responsibility, the rules on rest for drivers and so on. But nevertheless, at some point, we need to meet those requirements. So we remember, for example, when we had to start European Tahoe flights, we had to spend some time, but we are also covering this now. Now I would like to go deeper into what work is being done by the relevant ministry and the legislative body, Parliament of Ukraine, as for the adaptation of transport legislation to meet the requirements and the regulations of EU. First of all, we are talking about adaptation of Regulament 1071 of European Union that regulates the access to market by businesses. And we, so to say, have quite an optimistic news when we talk about this document. being brought to the final stage of review because 9th of April current year, the Committee on uh, Transportation and Infrastructure before the second reading, so the final review. I'm not going to call the name of this document, it's quite long, but we are talking about the access of Ukrainian carriers to the market on European conditions based on the regulation 1071. And here we are following very carefully, even though we haven't seen the latest version before the second reading of this document, but we've been actively working throughout these years on this document. And we can say the following, that a lot of preparation work has already been done towards this goal. What do I mean by this? If we talk about the principles of European accession to the market based on good reputation, financial state, professional competency, so those three things, I will try to focus on them. We have done a lot of work, both by the carriers and our state body, so to say. So the state agency on transportation safety, this is the body that is responsible for accession to market. They handle licenses, international or passenger transportation. They have done a lot towards the digitalization of this process of getting a license. Now, to get a license based on Ukrainian legislation in Act, everything is done digitally and every document is filed digitally. And this how we already have created good fundamental conditions to work later on while meeting the requirements of European Union. We have a careers registry and it works very good. So it's the single complex of informational systems in road transport sector. This is informational communicational system that consists of list of program complexes and registries. And as of right now, each carrier sees their license and their case. All the vehicles are registered there that are being used by carriers legally. Of course, that during martial law, even though I really don't want to talk about this because today we have a big tragedy in Chernihiv. Under shelling, many people died. But you touch these topics anyway because this is our reality. So during martial law, there was created such a system called Shlach or path. Because, of course, for men uh, that are good for the army, they need to register in the system, and the system works quite good. And I want to emphasize that a lot of homework has been done in this direction of work when we talk about licensing with new conditions, with new requirements. When we talk about the integrity of carrier, the absence on any criminal investigations, so it will be open or anything like this, it foresees the informational flow and the exchange between the Ministry of Internal Affairs that manages this information. As for when we talk about the certificates of professional competency, don't want to steal the time of our colleagues, but I just want to say more than 20 years we've had 3 associations that have been active. Educational Consultant Center that is preparing not only the drivers to get the certificates of professional competency, but also managers. That is also a requirement of EU when it gets to accession to market. So I just want to underline that already a lot of homework has been done and still ongoing. And I also would like to say that even even if we talk not about current situation and relying on this, but relying on agreement about association between Ukraine and EU back from 2014, we have an addendum to this agreement, transport, in particular also road transport. So I would like to inform our Polish colleagues that from this point of view, this addendum has some requirements for technical conditions, safety, social, tax, and other requirements. So, well, maybe it's a little bit of emotional comment, but I would like to say that the association has spent a lot of years in order to bring our legislation to meet the requirements of the directive of 1992 from EU. Uh, yes, sorry, it's 96 from EU Council for certain road transport vehicles that are being used within EU, and the maximum allowed sizes and so on. What are we talking about? At some point in Ukraine, we've increased the norms of overall mass up to 40 tons as it works for European countries. But it wasn't completely done because the axle loads were not completed. And also, we heard at some point that the carriers not uh, they could end up violating those requirements, and we maybe not as fast as we would like, but when we talk about the implementation of these requirements, we are moving forward. Yes, if we may, just one more minute, if we can, since we don't have that much time. Yes, yes, sure. I'm ready to finish. It's it's not a report, it's just information for our colleagues so they can feel our movement forward. And talking about positive experience, of course, just 2 words about challenges. The main, the main one, but we have a big challenge recently. This is a situation on Ukrainian-Polish border. No matter how bad we want to avoid it, but this is a problem. This is a serious problem, and I would like, in my turn, to ask Polish colleagues what was the most challenging for them in the process of accession to market on new conditions for Polish carriers. And thank you very much for your attention. Miss Valentina, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this review and super important information that Ukraine, maybe not super fast, but steady in its movement towards meeting European requirements. And this question about what was the most challenging for Polish carriers. And I want to give the floor to Mr. Piotr Litwinski. He is the president of Polish Association of Road Transport Employers. And I would like to ask what was the most challenging in this process? What maybe made this Polish market of Polish carriers, what made them so successful on the EU market? And another thing, why opening the border for Ukrainian carriers for them to bring goods to European markets raised so much uproar because I think that Polish is much more competitive market in this. So what really became the trigger? Thank you. Hello, I welcome everyone, dear colleagues. I don't really remember what was happening then, what were the biggest problems, but definitely the biggest problem, it was the technical state of vehicles and their age, because there were some regulations, Euro 2, Euro 4, 6, 5, but in the very beginning, we had to adapt to Western regulations. And I'm not going to I'm not going to hide the fact that of course we were filtered by Western companies because of course we were entering their market. And our vehicles, it was our us, Yelch, it was very it was our domestic transport. They could really compete with us very easily. We didn't have much money for modern transport, but we had to do that. And whoever wanted to work in this area, they had to took on credits, loans, and they had to buy new transport, new vehicle that was safe and not that easy to break as the old one. And it was a barrier for us. And the next barrier that we had to overtake it was unfortunately it was we were all happy as for the going through the border. We were all happy, but it turned out to be not as good as we thought. And then everyone started going, and our, people started competing, and it really went up. And a lot of carriers, they became rich. They had some equipment, maybe not necessarily meeting the requirements, but maybe somewhere in the night, when there was no control on the roads, they could still go out and do that. It was hard. It required hard work, and we managed to handle it. And as Andrzej Bogdanovich mentioned, from 24,000 trucks in 2004. Now we have 350,000 for all international transportation. But 300,000 is also operating within Poland. So this is an army of such vehicles. And Ukraine already has Ukrainian transport as we see on the road. You already have modern vehicles. Maybe it's not necessarily meeting Euro 6, for example, transportation. And for us, it's almost all of them are Euro 6. So this is going to be also taken into consideration. I think Ukraine has to start thinking about replacing their fleet, their vehicles with Euro 6, because it has to be vehicle with low level of emissions as it's outlined. For us, it's also a directive from EU, since we are driving around European countries, European market of Western Europe, we must meet certain conditions. As joining EU, it's not only good news, there are also some bad news. you need to take in both sides. For example, uh, send, for example, for your employees to make money as someone from Germany or from Italy do different requirements for put before us to still to still hold us back from competing with them, of course. So what can Ukraine offer when joining EU? What are the things that you have to stick to? First of all, Ukraine has to open up to this. 20 years we've been talking about those lines on Ukrainian-Polish border, and no one seems to solve this problem. It cannot happen like this, that on the border route and a a train is or a vehicle is waiting for 3 weeks or a month or so. Today I had a call that someone does some experiments and now the buses are put on the line, and the one that's like a bus that does regular route also needs to wait in the general line. This is impossible. And we are cooperating with colleagues from Ukraine, working together from Halachina. We have an organization which we support. Also, they support us when we have some problems. So it's a mutual support. But with this border, I don't know when there will be this moment where you can really cross with no problems. There was a moment where there was a football championship, and then borders were very easy to go through. Why? Because the border control was moved into one building. There was one Ukrainian, one Polish officer, and they were controlling the documents. It was joint work. And now you go to one border, you have to wait, then another border, and this becomes impossible. Now, Ukrainian transport is there. Everyone is looking and understanding that you are dealing with war, everyone's helping. But if Polish carrier loses the market, well, you don't get to be surprised that they're nervous. And different things happen, blocking the border. And I believe that this issue has to be handled as soon as possible because, as in life, from big friendship, big love, you can go into hatred. I don't want us to ruin our friendship. This is an easy question. Joining EU, we 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 wouldn't even run a technical control of a vehicle. They were not. We didn't have those stations of transport control, those tiers where you need to have a 5 meter gate for that truck to be able to get in there for diagnosis. We had to be super fast in building modern stations for transport control, and it was quite often that on that mobile station, the registry of the transportation was pretty much over because they could identify that maybe pipe is too old or some other part is not good. So it's important to keep an eye when we talk about technical control because when it's new, of course, it's easier. There's nothing really to talk about. But when it's old, it's always possible to find something. So yes, carry on, sir. We are inviting you to EU. We want to have one family, but as now millions of border passing since last year we've recorded. Before, 320,000 permits were issued for two ways. Polish had 160,000 and Ukrainians had 160,000, even though Polish, they were not using all of it to up to 100,000. The rest was not used. But colleagues from Ukraine, they were always in need for more. And now Ukrainian carriers, they have a carte blanche and they are going to all the countries in Europe. Now, of course, we need to take into consideration that there are going to be conditions of different requirements, the time for rest, time for driving, and you will have to leave EU for some time because this is the requirement of EU. So that's it for me. If you have any additional questions, please. Mr. Piotr, thank you very much. The position is quite clear. As far as I understand, now Poland is acting towards Ukraine pretty much just like you did with the Austrian and German carriers that also didn't want to give up their market. So obviously the requirements have to be met. On the other side, European Union, it is a principle of free competition if you are meeting all the requirements, of course, and playing by rules. So I hope we will not go from love to hatred, but we will find ways how to move on jointly. So as for the question whether the requirements are being executed, what is not, and what is the prospect of not maybe this competition, but partnership. But of course, it's always going to be their competition. I want to give the floor to Mr. Serhiy Nechai. He's director of Transpili. Our next speaker, Mr. Serhiy. Hello, dear colleagues. I will try to be brief, as Ms. Valentina Malchevska was very detailed as for some steps that Ukraine has taken towards EU accession. So maybe there's a practical question connected to the fact that Ukrainian carriers, they expect a lot of prospect from the association with EU society. And unfortunately now we have problems on the border where we have to look for other means in order to do transportation to EU. And this is an example of practical situation that Polish carriers have for this 20 years of conducting transportation within EU countries. How did they manage to almost tenfold increase their transportation fleet almost by 10 times while still meeting the requirement uh, of not raising the price too low to meet the requirements. So whether there was how did you do that? Preserving the prices and so on. Thank you very much. I will address this to our next speaker. That's Piotr Brzezinski, and he represents Poland. Mr. Piotr. Hello, do you hear me? Hello, thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to speak as well. I will answer the last question referring to last things we were discussing. When we are talking about some challenges that Polish transport sector had to work with 20 years ago and those that are existing now, I think now it seems like the requirements 20 years ago was quite easy, we may say now. But i- really, the rules of the game have changed drastically for this time. And now I think Ukraine has also to prepare for accession according to the regulations. And I think that technical issues is quite easy. It's not, it's easy to work with. It's the state of the vehicles, Euro 5, Euro 6. It's not complicated. So it's only about finance. But in current world, current economy, we were joining EU, where it was very important the freedom of service, providing services, and I'm not going to agree that we were using some price dumping. No, Polish transportation were working according to the principles that were acting in EU. It was the salaries, the salary systems that were meeting the legislation of our country, and we didn't use any price dumping, and we were joining EU and capturing those markets due to two elements. First is our desire to do hard work, you know, willingness to work. And at some point, it started bringing positive effect. On the other side, we also we also the costs for work in Poland, it was lower than in Europe, but in every sector it was like this. So the staff costs were lower. And also Poland was joining EU as a package, and transport was part of our economy, and road transport sector, they used their chance. But if we're talking about, I don't know, making sugar or any other areas, it was actually a good example. Unfortunately, it turned out that Polish sugar couldn't really help themselves on European market, and they were destroyed by competitors. You have to remember that a country joins EU as a package. The whole economy goes in, and no one really knows where you lose, where you gain. But throughout this 20 years, if we talk about Eastern European transport in EU, because Lithuania has a strong position, Bulgaria, Romania, but unfortunately, someone from the West said that this is something that requires more regulation. Hence, we had new regulations, and uh, regulation of business trips, and a new package was ad adopted where everything is outlined and the level of salaries that are, of course, naturally reflected by different economic potential, but now it's all flattened out. And here, a little disclaimer for Ukraine that maybe Ukraine will not be joining EU on this conditions that it was for us 20 years ago, because the conscience of Western European politics, it was different. Now it has been 20 years, and Western Europe sees that if you don't regulate the market, for example, by this package, then you will have a disbalance. And this Western entrepreneur, of course, of course, then the competition is better for them. So Western Europe, they wouldn't like to repeat those mistakes. And us as Polish transporters, we are already on this market. We are part of this market. We are meeting the requirements. Of course, we would like to know that every new country that is going to join EU, of course, we would like them to have the same principles and opportunities for all. And I think the biggest challenge for Ukrainian carriers is to adapt from the very beginning, from the day one, or maybe even more. Maybe it can be somehow spread out in time. And when we talk about the business trips for drivers and salary, social insurance, another issue that everything has to be prepared from the point of administration, government, and the adaptation to requirements, documents, licenses. But in the end of the day, everything depends on how hard you're willing to work. I think we need to take into consideration that cutting some slack when we talk about the salaries and so on, I don't think it's going to be available for Ukraine when it gets to joining EU. Mr. Piotr, thank you. We received the message. Executing the mobile package, we think that the benefits and salaries will be removed, but I think that Ukraine is still will be having advantages, also hardworking, even though it's still unfortunately being regulated, and more flexibility and interest. I would like to send this question: how can Ukraine compete? What can they compete with on European market now? How really competitive it will be when it meets all the requirements on technical state of vehicles and mobility on European Union? I would like to ask Mr. Alexei Moronenko, CEO of Miko Group and our partner. Mr. Uh, Moronenko, you okay? I think we've had some maybe technical issue. I don't see Mr. Alexei. Okay, then this question will be sent to the next speaker, Irina Kosse. She's a lead researcher, transport expert in Institute of Economic Research. So, Ira, a question is going to be broader. So, how really is it possible, the natural desire of Poland to protect their market versus natural desire of Ukrainians to go to the maximum when entering EU market, and the needs of Ukraine to do everything during the wartime and logistical limitation to do everything that is needed. Is it possible to do short term, or is it only long term when Ukraine is going to meet all the requirements and it's going to be harder for Poland to block the border. Hello, so it's quite hard question how Ukraine can really combine meeting the requirements of European legislation with the current hard situation. I would like to reflect in the beginning is what was mentioned by colleagues from Poland, that before the full scale invasion, there were two side permits and Ukraine used 160,000 permits, but Polish side was only using 100. Let's not forget that we have a huge market where Polish transportation was coming, and after this market was closed after Russian aggression from 2014, of course, Polish side was not that interested in Ukrainian market. Of course, EU was their main interest. So for us, those limitations of 160,000 for us it was very limited, very limiting. And every year we had negotiations on increasing this number and get additional permits. But when the full scale invasion happened, if you look at the map, probably two-thirds of Ukrainian border closed immediately, and those areas of on land borders that are still open, and the biggest part is Polish. So of course it's not a surprise how much more active the border became with Polish side. As for how we will be successful in this, it was mentioned a few times that Ukrainian carriers that are doing international uh, transportation, they have already adapted their work and their vehicles to meet the regulations of EU. Of course, with the beginning of full-scale invasion of Russia, the number of carriers in Ukraine has increased. And it's not those professionals, so to say, uh, maybe carriers and the members of FastMap and that are meeting all the requirements. But of course, it's the forceful transition and they have to work somehow. And of course, some vehicles that they buy, they don't meet the requirements of EU. And we hope that this problem will be solved soon. And especially when the war is over, our carriers will have enough, or they will be able to take loans in order to update and renew their fleet and receive modern trucks. I think that now the main challenges that stand before Ukrainian road transport, they were mentioned, but I just want to outline again. First of all, is to meet the requirements on emissions, because European regulation on emissions, for example, Euro 6, it requires a significant decrease in emission, or when I talk about pollution from vehicles. And as I said, the transportation fleet of internal transportation is normally old and doesn't meet those conditions. Second challenge, I think it's the safety of traffic, and European standards are much higher than those we have in Ukraine. And we're talking about safety for the vehicles itself and infrastructure of the roads. We haven't really talked about this, but this is an important component. And that requires really significant investments in improving the system. Another thing, it's not directly connected to our today's topic, but it's also important, is the infrastructure for electric cars, charging stations. It's a very modern vehicle that is meeting European Green agreements and taking into consideration that we have increasing numbers of people using this green car, so to say. Of course, we will have to expand the number of charging stations. So this is the three key ones. Of course, we have more challenges when it comes to regulatory standards, logistics, and so on. And of course, there are a lot of tasks, and the reports that are being prepared about Ukrainian preparedness to access EU, which shows that Ukraine still has a lot of homework to do, even though, as Miss Valentina mentioned, slow but steady, we're moving on this path, and we keep um adopting Euro integration laws. And an important thing that Ukrainian roads were connected to European network that allowed us to work with European foundations, and the issue on the infrastructure of road transportation routes allowed us to. We are really hoping for support in this, and we can hope for European support. Thank you if it took too long. I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. It's very clear, very structured. It's clear that Ukraine hasn't done all the homework, as we call it. Even licensed carriers that are targeting European markets, of course, they are more ready than all the transport fleet that exists in Ukraine. But if we come back to the question, if we talk about joining EU, of course, the situation is more or less understandable because there are some issues that are connected to regulation about technical state. And of course, the experience of Poland 20 years ago, it was positive. But ever since then, the regulation on European market has changed drastically. That also means some changes when it comes to requirements to Ukraine, even though now we need to say that probably Ukraine knows more than before about the requirement on green development and this pillar. And it's not Ukrainian or EU, this is a global challenge. But we want to go back to how to unblock the situation right now. Do we have any options except for going back to permit system that from one point would make would be good uh, uh, both for Polish and Ukrainian carriers? I would like to send this question to Polish and Ukrainian colleagues, but I would like first to ask Serhiy Nechai. So, what uh, are Ukrainians ready to meet some additional conditions in order to remove any concerns of Polish side as for the technical state, the cost for salaries, and all the mentioned issues? So how flexible is Ukraine? And then we will ask Poland as well. Sergey, I don't see him, but I have a good. Yes, can you hear me? Yes, yes, we do. Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to mention in under which condition the international transportation is done within European countries and Ukraine. Everyone knows that due to full-scale invasion and military actions on the territory of Ukraine, there was an agreement signed between Ukraine and European Union as for conducting permit-free transportation. And the sites are European Union and Ukraine. This agreement allows us to conduct transportation from Ukraine to EU and EU to Ukraine, or transit through European countries. I want to point your attention that this agreement does not allow us to conduct transportation within the countries of European Union. And if we conduct transportation to European countries, it's only can be done just like it's AMT a permit with multiple use. And I just want to emphasize that with the current system, we cannot really compete with European carriers that work with them because we have some limitations on the directions of transportation and opportunities of mobility of conducting such transportation. What do we expect? First of all, we expect the borders to be unblocked. We don't have the opportunity to wait for 12, 20 days to cross the border. And we are forced to, we have to do it more costly, for example, through Romania, to the countries of Western Europe, since there's no crossing through Polish border. As for conditions, the ones we should meet, we already meet them. And this is about the minimal salary in Germany, in France. The latest changes to Polish legislation as for meeting the requirements on minimal wage and business trips, limitations for drivers. We're already doing this, so I would say that on this path to European Union, we are already doing this and meeting the requirements. There's no other way because we are serving our economy in such hard time, and nothing else is possible, I see. So we are actively integrating in EU, and those trips have to be served. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Oleksiy Moronenko that also joined us with the same question about how Ukrainian side sees the challenges and opportunities on the market of EU, and whether he agrees with this statement that Ukrainian carriers are already executing the requirements of European Union, or they're close to do so. And after Mr. Oleksiy, I would like to talk to Polish representatives, Mr. Piotr and Piotr Litvinsky, Piotr Prudzinski, as for how they see the response of Ukraine. Where are we not good, except for, of course, competition that is going up, but it always raises some resistance. But on the other side, competition is also part of European Union, so I think we all agree here. Mr. Oleksiy, the word goes to you. Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Oleksiy Moronenko. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, yes, we hear you. Go ahead. Yes, we do. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes. Great. So, first of all, my personal opinion, we need to emphasize that Ukrainian economy is in the first, second shoulder of creation of added value chain. And if we are exporting, if we look at what we're exporting to EU, we cannot pay the same level of salary to Ukrainian drivers because Poland is in third, fourth, or even fifth chain when we talk about added value. And this really impacts because our economy is more about raw material mostly. And we will not really hold the competition if we're going to pay the same salary, so to say. And this is the main reason why the salaries for drivers are lower in Ukraine. And this really has a big impact. So when a lot of clients, they really didn't want to transport anything. For them, it was uh, cheaper to wait, or using the freights that are available on the market when it became more costly. Now part is unblocked, so it went down. And I just now had a conversation with a client, and he said, I'm going to wait for the freights to go lower because the market doesn't allow me to work with these, even for import. And it is connected to Ukraine creating added value, and the economy is more towards uh, commodity economy, and it's easy to compare the one that makes Volkswagen or Mercedes and the one that produces oil. Of course, that those that make cars, they have a margin of 40-60%. Of course, that they are ready to pay um, for freights differently. And in European Union, it's higher because the players of this market of road transportation market, they can support those this price for freights. And why Ukrainian market is full of used vehicles, because there are no such freights that can be really taken by the clients of road transport market, and it has to be taken into consideration. When in Ukraine, we will have enterprises that can really take it, then it's going to work. And it will automatically be reflected in the increase of salaries for drivers. But as for now, we cannot pay this money because we have a different economy now. And when it's going to be different, then we can really think about something. Because then, second thing, it's about the lines on the border. It was like this even before blocking the border, and it's connected to infrastructure. If we talk about a certain unbranched structure of crossing the border. And as far as I know, when I was in Lviv on a conference, and there was a deputy of Lviv border, he said that they're lacking people. I also want to say that it also happens for Polish side. And I think these two factors, when the infrastructure is not structured for crossing the border and lack of people from both sides, it creates lines because the fleets has grown, starting from the beginning of war in 2014, 2015, and signing the agreement on mobile trade. It went up, and that really influenced. Is now it's weak infrastructure, lack of staff, personnel, and it had to be addressed and increase the number of people from both sides in order to support it. Unfortunately, it hasn't been done. For example, if we take into consideration digital lines, it's a very cool decision, but for that you need to have such accumulators on the border like they have on the Polish side, where drivers can rest while they're waiting for their line. It doesn't exist there now, and this is also a certain reason. Also, another reason from the Polish side is the sanitary doctor. I think alliance part of export from Ukraine requires the control from sanitary doctor, and but the thing is that the the throughput of those doctors is very low, and as we don't have an opportunity to put the cars and the drivers um, for them to rest while they're waiting in line. It creates a bigger problem. And if we want to integrate to EU, by the point where we're going to be 100% integrated, we need to build branched out infrastructure for the point of crossing of the border and fill it up with more people, more personnel from both sides. And I think that's going to be a good solution. And once again, the sanitary health officer, because this is a requirement from the Polish side, and it really significantly impacts the throughput of border crossing. Mr. Alexei, thank you very much. Yes, sorry, carry on. Just to summarize, there are some steps. First of all, the reconstruction of border crossing, like on Polish side, a good example could be Krakowiec-Karczowa crossing point. You can go and check what equipments they have. They have the screen of digital line. The drivers have an opportunity to rest and wait on the line. It's easy to see when it's your turn. It's a good system. Another is personnel on customs and health officers, because there is lack of people. That of course also decreases the throughput on border crossing points. And as now the goods turnover is going to only go higher, and the road transport is going to be the main transport for now, and we will require more people, again, health officers. And when the economy will become more valuable, then the businesses will afford to work with more expensive freights, and then it's going to be possible to raise the salaries and then meet the requirements of European Union. Mr. Alexei, thank you very much. You've raised two another interesting, important issues. One side, how to develop the border, and another one, how really infrastructural expenditures will return. If we oriented 2030, for example, as the date for joining EU, but there is a question whether Ukraine is ready, EU is ready for this date. Is it enough time? And another one, how competitive Ukrainian economy is now, and how to execute a mobile package. I'm sorry, we are already being late on time. It's 1:35 and we were going to end at 1:30, but just a minute of also their comments for the colleagues that didn't get a floor. Lukasz is already telling me that we have to be done now. But if anything, maybe some key things we've heard from Mr. Alexei, I would invite Mr. Petro Brzezinski and Piotr Litvinsky and Mr. Andrzej and Valentina if she wants. That's it. Just 1 minute, please, of each. Just a quick comment. Dear colleagues, it's not a friend when they just nod and agree with you. It's the ones that tell you the truth. And we would like to have it in this understanding. And I keep saying that, in my personal opinion, the lines, the border, and the border crossing points. And no matter what they say, we know internally what it looks like. And the digital line is working, not for everyone. We're just not talking about this. For 20 years, we've been fighting for those border crossing was real, not to have the line, but no one can do that. Everyone knows that it's needed. Everyone knows how to do that, but no one does. And here, if you access EU, of course, we are full in, but also let the EU come to you. Us Polish people, we almost don't go to Ukraine now. And if a driver has to really spend a month in a line, it's better for them not to go. Honestly, I don't even know where to find such a driver who's ready to do that. And when you go to Krakow or other Polish city, look at the vehicles, it's Ukrainian vehicles. And then you're surprised when those people, they don't want to go. And of course, you say that you don't have that much money and you have the situation, but what do you want us to do? Do you want us to just give you the market? How is this surprising? And that's how we ended up with this mobility package, because the carriers of other countries, they gathered 1,000, 2,000 vehicles in Paris, and they were going from the morning to different countries. And French, uh, they prepared it for German people. If you want to drive here, then you have to pay the salaries like we do, and you're being surprised. So yes, I will tell you that the Polish would do the same if they had their vehicles standing in Warsaw. Okay, thank you very much. Your position is clear, Mr. Piotr. Do you want to comment on anything as well? Yes, just briefly, I will add that the border is a key thing. Border has always been and will be, and every carrier, Ukrainian, Polish, or any other, they want that want to work on this market, they will need efficient infrastructure, and that's why I think that it's our joint. It's important that Polish and Ukraine, on the level of EU, were really in were really ensuring that we need the money here. And this is one element. And another element, and I will reiterate the point of my previous colleagues, one speaker said that Ukrainian companies, they already pay according to the mobility package. And another speaker said it's impossible to ensure this level of salary when we talk about commodity economy. And mobility package, it's something that already exists in our transport reality in Europe. And we want to point your attention to this, not to scare you, but for us, this is a challenge that we've been addressing for this last 2 years. And of course, it reduced our competitiveness quite a lot. So if you want to prepare to join the EU, if you're starting and you're implementing some preparation plan, you also need to take this into consideration, and you need to prepare for this. So this mobility package will be acting for you as well from day one. We have to live in this reality and carriers for Western Europe. We also explained that our economies are not the economies of high technology or Poland, Romania, Bulgaria. Those are service economies. That's why we reached such successful service market in EU. But no one is interested in this. And those rules of EU, they are strict, really. And when you join from this side, you will see there's nothing easy here. Everyone is fighting for themselves. And mobile package, this is already part of our reality. And this is a thing that Ukraine will have to take in. Mr. Piotr, thank you. Clear. One thing, though, that Ukraine is learning that in European Union, the hard, strict rules are already present, and Ukrainian side is already standing on the border, not only due to lines, but also due to blockage. And I think a key question from Ukrainian side, whether if we meet the conditions and mobility package from European Union, how really sticking to the rules of the game, and I'm sure that they exist and they will exist, of course, in this situation. So the crisis goes into a trend. But sorry, I'm really going over the time, and I know you will be mad at me. But Mr. Andrzej, do you want to add anything, or are we done here? First, it was very interesting to listen to positions of both sides. I believe that membership is not going to be a problem for Ukraine, but we need to remember that this opening for entrepreneurs, market, and there will be market rules applied, and you just need to take this into consideration. It's not going to be regulated environment where you have permits. It's going to be an open market, and market control is going to be there, and it's going to be a competition. You have to understand that. Thank you very much. And on this keynote, so European market is a market with competition that has rules. Nevertheless, it's a competitive market on which we all want to work. So I think we should stop here. I agree with Mr. Piotr that Ukraine has to be part of this market, and Polish people, they also need to be work as successfully in Ukraine as Ukrainians in Poland, and together we need to work successfully in all other markets of European Union. And I think that this discussion has brought us a little bit closer to understanding where we are at right now, what has to be changed, and how to get to our accession as soon as possible to European Union. Thank you everyone very much. Until the next time. Next week we have a conference in Kyiv. So everyone who is there, we invite you to join us 24th of April. And everyone else, we will meet in a month during the discussion of pharma markets and this business. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you for the meeting. Slava Ukraini. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you.